Now we have come to that part of the meeting that everyone has been waiting for. We're going to cut the cake and see what it tastes like. And by doing this, we're going to open it up and let you ask Morgan some of those questions that you have jotted down. Please feel free to do so at this time.
Hearing none, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
You were really good.
I'll just while you're cogitating on that, I don't know why I've got this here. It's for something else that I do typically on Thursday nights with a group overseas about communication skills. But the title of this article says Douglas Adams' Note to Self reveals that the author found writing to be torture. And then it goes on to say he was one of the most wildly imaginative writers of any generation, but even for Douglas Adams, writing could be a torturous process requiring a general note to myself that he would finally get pleasure from it. And so I think some of the time that we spend in gazing out the window, wondering what possibly could we talk about, and then going to whatever device you choose to use to jot your outlines or however your process might be, it can be so difficult. And yet you've got to have faith that on the other side of all of this, that you're going to learn about your subject and about yourself and have something of worth to give. But oh golly, that span in between points A and B can be really, really hard and challenging. So I thought it was interesting that you had that query about Douglas Adams in tonight's table topics. Thanks very much.
Excuse me, Morgan.
Yes.
I am wondering, I think you mentioned that you were involved in the engaging humor contest as well?
Back in the day, it was just called the Humorist Speech Contest, and it stopped at the region.
But yes, so funny is your thing. How do you prepare? What do you do if you're a person like me where I am mildly amusing at best? So how can I be funny when I'm requested to do engaged humor ideas?
You know, all of this is, thank you very much for that question. And so what can you do to ratchet up your humor to make it more effective? Is that the question?
Yeah, I'm not funny.
Well, you don't know. You haven't tried. I think there's a key word with all of this. And as we aspire, we shouldn't get in our own way. I think we need to attach the word yet, right? Y-E-T. And so part of developing your funny bone is to observe people who do it for a living. And so much of what goes on around us is just observational. The human is the strangest animal of all, and good stand-up is often just observational humor. And if you develop your skills of observation, and you actually exercise that, and every conversation is a rehearsal. Every time we have a conversation, it is a component of a presentation. If I'm chatting with somebody, I'm watching whether or not what I'm saying is registering, and I then will catalog, ooh, that was good. It's not that I'm using the people that I'm talking to necessarily, but I have learned that every conversation is a resource. And so try stuff out all the time, and watch what other people are doing who do it for a living. Listen to other people who you think are funny, pay attention to them, and then aspire. You know, you might not consider yourself to be funny, but I would attach the word yet, because you bring this great energy. You bring luminescence to this screen. So you're halfway there already, right?
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind.
Morgan, I had a quick question. It's Marcia from Boise.
Hello, Marcia.
And I had been in Toastmasters about 3 or 4 years, maybe 2 or 3 years when you won the championship. But my recollection was that the year before you came in second, And the thing that has always stuck in my mind was the claim that you took a live horse with you as a speech prop for that speech. And I want you to confirm or deny that and tell us if you would ever do that again.
Partially true, Marcia. I took a full-size horse, but not a live horse.
Ah.
So that talk was actually one of the strongest talks I've ever put together. The summary of it was that as a veterinarian, I was asked to deliver a draft horse foal. It was a very difficult delivery, and by all norms, that horse never should have survived, and yet she did. And so the theme of the talk was about persistence. And I thought many people in that audience at the finals would not really grasp how large a draft horse is. Riding horses are one thing, but a draft horse, a horse that is a work horse, that is bred for its muscularity and temperament, is a much larger beast. And so with the help of some artist friends at the Idaho National Engineering Laboratory, we put together a graphic depiction that was true to size, and it folded up, so it was a bit of an engineering feat. Actually, it's only recently gone to the landfill, but Steve Gale had that for a very long time. He had that artifact for a long time. But I took that as a prop to the finals, and actually the person from Toastmasters International, Debbie Horn was her name, who was in charge of the contest, came to my hotel room in Toronto the night before the contest. And she said, look, I understand you have a very large prop. You need to know that this audience is very conservative, and you may be jeopardizing your opportunity to score well by bringing this prop to the stage. And that was a very nice way of saying, you know what, you're stupid, don't do it. And I thought to myself, okay, now again, it circles back to be yourself, right? Dance with the one who brung you. I thought, this is a talk about persistence. This is a talk about survival despite all odds. I said, I have to bring this as planned to the stage. It may have cost me. It may have cost me because it would have been perceived as a gimmick, but sure, I would do it again. And of course, today, there would be technological ways to do that wouldn't require a physical prop that was just virtually unmanageable to ship. But it was a breakthrough for me, and it was an exercise in courage, and I could have easily done it with a photograph. And in the times that I've given that talk since, I always use a photograph. But no, it was a great learning experience.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Morgan, this is Mel Smith from the Meridian Club. I was with Marcia at that contest. And all these years, in the back of my mind, I have thought that was a real horse, that you gave a speech with the real horse. In fact, I have repeated it over and over, that we had somebody from our area that won the contest that actually had a real horse. And I was going to ask you a question before, Mark. How was the logistics of that? Who handled the wheelbarrow and the shovel behind that horse?
Yeah, that'd be right. That would be right. No, she was well trained. No, it was a fold-up deal. It was PVC pipe and foam core and duct tape and quite a deal. And that contest was in Toronto, and I had a very large homemade plywood box that she folded up into. That was just awkward to handle. And we flew it in the belly of the airplane, and you know, getting on the bus and all of that stuff. And then it was the rehearsal for its deployment, because she folded up like an accordion in 3 pieces, and it was draped in nylon. And so the hope was that at the moment I said something to the effect of, well, you need to see how big she really is, was able to pull that drape off and then in a quick movement deploy her. I was down on that stage practicing that deployment at 2 a.m. until it was time to go shower and get ready for the contest. So a lot of stuff happened pre-contest. And you know what? it sounds like I was the guy, right? That did all of that. I had a great team. Steve Gale was part of that team. Members of Rise and Shine were so supportive. We had sort of a special tactics team that we were just sharpening our knives, and we were cutting words down to syllables, and really I was the representative of the club. And the artists that supported me from INEL were fantastic. Somebody said, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. And one guy came up to me later and he said, we can do that and we will do that. And so they projected this little tiny model, life size, sketched it with a Sharpie, cut it out and painted it. It was just a grand project. But I was just the representative for the club and for so many fantastically supportive people. And that's kind of gotten lost in all of that. Of course, it's a long time ago now, but that was a great experience, and I could never have done that solo without that great team of people. Frank McGovern and Tony Austin and Steve Gale and Marty Hubner and Justin Materman, and you know, the list goes on and on and on. Really impactful people in my life.
This speech almost cost me a divorce because Don was upset with the horse being in our bed.
Should have just.
Well, I know it was in your garage for over 20 years.
Oh, it was a sad day when my wife kicked the horse out.
Sad story about that horse. So Yasmine was this horse's name, and she shouldn't have survived. And the delivery process damaged a nerve in her hind leg, and so she was unable to stand at birth. And so here is look, when they're born, a draft horse, this particular horse weighed probably 120 pounds at birth, right? At birth. And horses are designed to be able to stand up and go very quickly after they're born. And she couldn't stand because that leg, that femoral nerve, had been damaged in the difficult delivery. And consultation with surgeons, they said, look, if she's not better in a couple of weeks' time, it's not going to get better. She got better. She was able to stand. My neighbor adopted her, and it was just a fantastic story. But the grit that it took for her to survive, she was like a one-owner dog, right? She was a one-owner horse, and you didn't want to get into the paddock alone without Debbie, the neighbor, the owner, with you, because Yasmine was pretty aggressive. And that aggressiveness is what allowed her to survive. I left Idaho Falls and moved to New Zealand, but I came back a few years later to give some talks at INEL and inquired about what's ever happened to Yasmine, because she was just a majestic animal. And evidently, as horses do, she got a leg caught in a woven wire fence, and she got very aggressive about pulling that leg out of the fence, and she severed an artery, and sadly she I guess the fancy word is exsanguinated, but she bled to death. And so it was her own aggressive, gritty spirit that ultimately that was part of her survival, but it was also part of her demise. Anyway,
Looks like we got Bill Parker who has a question for you.
Yes, Morgan. Well, first of all, I am a Toastmaster, so the first I can make a comment before the question is that I want to thank you. I'm in the midst of competing in the International Speech Contest. I have I think a well-written speech that's funny. It's pretty poignant. My characters have a lot of emotion, and I didn't and don't. So I do want to thank you, because I think you opened up something for me. I realized that I talked about what my character taught me, but I didn't really talk about why what they said meant a lot to me.
mm-hmm.
And it opened up a little Pandora's box of emotion right now. So my question is, when I try to get to this box when I'm going to be competing, how do I open it, and how do I keep it from flying too far open?
Yeah. Well, some of that's practice, right? So good on you, right? Good on you for going to that box, because this is the kind of courage that it takes for us to grow personally, right? Maybe it's not in your emotional makeup to want to go into that space of vulnerability, but authenticity is magnetic. And so if you can sort of explore that place, right? You've got 900 words, 7 minutes and 30 seconds. You've got that package of time that you have to constrain your ideas to. But if we as communicators can adapt the techniques of method acting, and that is, as a kid, I used to wonder, how is it that these actors can just turn on the waterworks, that they can cry on command? Well, they go to a space emotionally where they feel that emotion. And it may be unrelated to the scene, but if I want to cry, look, I've got abundant examples in my 62 years of history where I can go back and find an emotional moment that'll push me right to that edge. And so you can go into that space as you prepare, and know that, you know, there's the old Moravian study that is often cited from, he was from the West Coast, maybe Stanford, I can't remember, but where the statistics have come out that 7% of our message is the words that we use, and a bigger percentage, like 35%, is body language, and then tone. Anyway, it's a mix of 3 components, and I used to think, are you kidding me? It's all about the words. But you know what? It's not. It's because this feeling brain, this limbic brain, this emotional center in all of our makeup is like a radio receiver. We can't see radio waves, but we know when somebody is feeling something. It is that emotional contagion that bridges that gap. And if it's authentic, it's powerful. It's really powerful. And so your question is, first of all, you make a statement that you're beginning to explore that. And I think that's great, because I believe that my mentor, my hero, John Howard, also had that block. He had great delivery. He had great writing skills. He just couldn't take that step into that vulnerable space. And look, I've watched people go too far, too deep into the vulnerable space. One fellow in a finals competition talked about being sexually abused as a kid. And you know, that's a bridge too far. And it's not the place for us to do our therapy on the platform. So you come to grips with all of that stuff, and you do the work, right? You do the wordsmithing, and you explore those emotions enough that you've got that managed before showtime. And look, you are in for a very rich experience. I'll tell you that, based on what you've just shared, because now you're probing new territory. You're going into a space where you're uncertain, and that's a good space to be, because there's growth and there's learning there. You know, be yourself, sure. Find yourself. That's where you're going. And when you wrestle with that, share yourself. Good on you.
Thank you.
Hey, Morgan, I just have a quick question. Well, actually, 2. Did you really drive the semi, and did you get the hogs?
Yeah. Look, I found some photographs the other day. I'm having to clean out my basement to get ready for some guys to come and do basement repair. Right? We got a leaky basement, and so that's forcing me to exhume all of this old stuff. And I came across photographs of that semi, and you know what? It's been years. That was that must have been in the 80s when that happened. And it still evokes the thrill and the memories, that the whole experience comes flooding back. That was just absolutely rich. And that's the power of emotion. right? That's the power of memory. And I had had a little bit of experience in high school driving a transmission like that, where you're double clutching, and this Peterbilt had an 18-speed transmission. And so we drove to Lethbridge, Alberta empty, and that part was easy. We loaded up with hogs and turned around, came back, and I drove that way too. And it was a very different beast, pun intended. And part of the thrill of telling the story is outside of Montana's capital city, Helena, is a long hill, and they call it Helena Hill because it is one Helena Hill. And by this time, I'm starting to think that I'm something, right? I'm getting it. I'm kind of getting this truck driving thing. I am liking it, and I'm getting a handle on it. And this is at night, and we're climbing Helena Hill, and I am grabbing gears one after the other as gravity is pulling us backwards, and I'm just so cocky, and I missed a shift. And I ground the gears, and the truck, we had to stop fully loaded on Helena Hill and start over. And the semi that I had just passed, it was an ABF truck line semi, and he had 3 trailers. And I had passed him thinking I'm pretty hot stuff. And then he passed me and flashed my lights like, yeah, buddy, you think you got it figured out? How come you had to stop? It was rich. It was just rich. Yeah.
Was that like 42 years ago?
Yeah, probably so. Yeah. I had hair.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your questions. You know you've made it to the top of the speaking arena when someone asks you, can you speak in Firth, Idaho for us? Before I turn the meeting to Kathy, I just have a sidebar for those who have stayed this late into the meeting. Morgan will conveniently validate your Stonefly Pizza parking tickets after the meeting. Back to you.